Hello, as is it possible that different people from different generations have different views of what leadership is? The styles or models of leadership that have been appearing, I would like that at the end of watching this video, you would be able to describe the evolution of leadership theories over time, and also you can list the leadership styles that have emerged, well, at least the most frequent or the most reused. On the left side you can see that I show you an outline of how the different leadership theories have been appearing. What I want to emphasize is that at the beginning the theories were based on personality traits and the body of knowledge, skills and attitudes of the people who acted as leaders. At the beginning of the second round the focus was more on behaviors, on the set of behaviors exhibited or activated by the people acting as leaders, and success was considered to come from a closed and fixed set of behaviors. Later this stage evolved into contingency theories, theories of contingency, that the leader's success depended on his or her behavior adapting to the context, to the tasks and characteristics of the people in his team. And this stage was closed with the emergence of transformational leadership in its first versions, the first versions of what transformational leadership was. From the third stage opened up with an analysis of the previous research done over the previous 50 years, and certain models began to emerge. The latest generation, where the emphasis is on the adaptation of the leader's behavior to the needs of each of the people in his team, that is, not only do you have to adapt to the context of what your group is, but you have to adapt to what each of the people in your team needs. This was one of the focuses which this third stage began, and the other focus was the deployment of behaviors linked to authentic or helpful transformational styles. That in the end what they do is remind us a little bit of the models based on charisma, so that nowadays the pendulum has returned to the features, but with different features from those proposed in the middle of the last century. This is what you pose. In fact, this is what I present in the transparency, is what one of the most important consultancy firms puts forward to define people who are leaders in environments that are volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. I have pasted in the part that you see in orange as it is, what appears in one of his reports. That's why you have it in English, and if you look at what he proposes there. In my opinion, these traits are not exclusive of the leader, but I think they would serve for a person who is a good operator, for a good teammate, even for a good volunteer for an NGO. That is, I think that basically what this is defining are the desirable traits for any working person in these environments. I've also been talking to you about theories. In the first transparency I've been talking to you about theories, but maybe the interesting thing would be to know how these theories are landed so that they can be applied in practice, and that is precisely the role of the models, that serve to give guidelines or suggestions to choose which is the most appropriate leadership style. Some models are universal and always propose the same style for you to have a successful leadership, a style that is a set of behaviors for you to have successful leadership, and other models, however, are contingent, that is, these models give you a set of styles. This combination of behaviors and some attributes that describe a situation, usually what the people in the team are like or the tasks that you have to deal with, and based on that the model tells you what is the most appropriate style for that particular situation, for that combination of attributes. The main styles that have been proposed over time, you have them reflected, have been proposed over time and are still in force. That is to say, this is a model where styles have been added but the original ones have not been removed. There are things that had not yet been analyzed or that in the context where it began to be studied were not relevant, and with the passage of time have begun to be behaviors or sets of behaviors that are relevant. I think that this transparency by summary not only in the part of historical evolution, because I've been putting it in sequence, where they were more or less appearing, but also that they are valid and current. What I'm going to tell you is a little bit about the characteristics of these pure styles, but you have to be aware that really what a person does when they exercise leadership is to pick up certain behaviors or a set of behaviors that sometimes splash different styles, so therefore you have a hybrid model. You are not a 100% structured leader, but it's probably that you put some notes of consideration and maybe a little bit of helpfulness and maybe a little bit of intellectual stimulation. Whereas someone else might focus the base or fundamental part of their behaviors on consideration and then put some self-awareness and maybe a little bit of inspirational motivation, and it will make the way that person is perceived different from the first one. I'm going to tell you a little bit in more detail about each one, how to identify each one of these styles. Structuring, which is the first one that you have in the transparency, is fundamentally concerned with knowing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done and how it needs to be done. So what he basically does is explain how the work should be done and then focus his attention on achieving the objectives and measuring the result that is being obtained. A different style is that of consideration, where these people pay attention to the individual needs for achievement and growth of each of the people who make up the team, try or strive to be, by behaving in a way that is seen as honest and open and giving enough information for the people on your team to understand why you make the decisions you do, and in this way she acts more like a coach or a mentor and creates learning opportunities and fosters a supportive environment for the individual growth of the people on her team. The self-awareness style focuses on understanding what that person's own strengths and weaknesses are as a leader, what your values are, what your emotions are, what you're feeling, and what your core motivations are. You're not aware of all these things. The model-based, the data-driven decision model represents a person who is primarily engaged in analyzing information objectively, to consider different perspectives, to make fair and informed decisions based precisely on those data or on those facts, not on assumptions. The leadership style that we would label as internalized moral perspective represents a person who has a strong sense of ethics and values and completely aligns his actions to these principles, is not swayed by what people say, what society says, or what is fashionable, but his behaviors are fundamentally governed by those values and those ethics that this person has.
Fundamentalmente regidos por esos valores y esa ética que tiene esta persona.
Leadership or servant leadership style or idealized influence depends on which theory or which set of authors call it one way or the other, tends to place the needs of the people on his team above the leader's own needs and shares the risks with his followers. The inspirational motivational style is fundamentally dedicated to motivating and inspiring the people in their team, and this is usually achieved by providing meaning or understanding why they do things and also by seeking a challenge in the work or tasks that these people perform. And finally, the intellectual stimulation style focuses on questioning assumptions, that is, don't take anything for granted. If this is the way things have always been done, why shouldn't we do things differently? It reformulates problems, it addresses situations that were addressed in the past in one way, in totally new ways, that is, it is very much linked to creativity and innovation. I think at this point in time you are able to describe in some way, somehow, how leadership theories have evolved over time, and you're also able to list the major leadership styles that are still in place.